here we are again on a beautiful day in Chicago from the West Side. I'm LaShawn Ford, state representative, and it's the Chicago Hill.
And it's a beautiful day on the North Shore as well.
Yeah, I'm sure it is, Meleika. You with those big old houses.
It's always a beautiful day on the North Shore.
Yes.
A little less so from Oak Park, but I suppose better than the West Side. So.
It's good to have all of us together, you know? You know, Mark and Meleika, you know, one of the things that is happening all over the world is, you know, we're seeing a lot of violence, you know, international violence, but also domestic violence. And, you know, there's this struggle between community and police. And it sort of reminds me of us cutting our nose off to spite our face. I truly believe that we have to find common ground to work with police work with community in order for us to have a more peaceful and respectful society. And that's coming from a Black man, you know, and in order to heal our nation, we got to be fair. And one of the things that's happening all over the world and right here in our own state and city is violence, domestic violence. And in order to deal with that domestic violence, we have to have a collaboration between community and police. The community cannot be fighting with the police if we want to rely on the police to help keep us safe. And this battle between law enforcement and community dates back as far long before I was born. And it continues today. And, you know, as a politician, I think that one of our greatest challenges is to figure out how we're going to respect the police and the police respect the citizens so that we can have safer communities. What do you say?
I agree with you 100%. It looks like the police, looking at that clip, have been having issues for many years with the community, Black, white, Irish, Jewish, Italian, just issues. And let me say, Evanston, we just had our interim first Black woman police chief, and she didn't stay for 6 months. I don't know what happened. I would love that story. She left. Like, we were all celebrating, like excited.
Why don't we, Meleika, why don't you see if we can interview her sometime?
I would love to get her, but I don't know if she's able to speak on it. That's the thing.
Well, I'm sure not unless she got a gag order, but you know, so the clip that we are about to listen to dates back to 1968. And, you know, we've learned that this is the first 60-minute episode ever played. And so now let's listen to it. It talks about the relationship between police and community. And you will see some parallels to the community and police today.
The American policeman in 1968 is out of joint with his time. He is the target for charges of brutality, mistreatment of minorities. He's regarded with fear by some, contempt by others. In turn, he complains of a public disrespect for law and order, says that he's hamstrung in the performance of his duty by technicalities in the law. There can be little doubt that he is undertrained, underpaid for the job with which we've charged him. The top cop in the United States is Attorney General Ramsey Clark. He, too, has been damned by some, indeed by some law enforcement officers, as soft on crime, soft on law and order. He offered no concession to those who damn him when he said last week, of all violence, police violence in excess of authority is the most dangerous. For who will protect the public when the police violate the law? I asked Ramsey Clark about the American policeman.
The policeman today is a man who is put upon from every standpoint. He's not paid well, he's not trained well, He finds a little opportunity to improve himself. He lives a life that causes very considerable risk to his safety. His relationships with the community that he there serves have become so strained in so many parts of our cities that he is living, working in a hostile environment.
Well, he's living in a hostile environment because he is the white community or the outside community's, let's say, point of contact with that community. He's out at the cutting edge.
The people who live there will tell you that when the sun goes down, there ain't nobody here but us and the cops.
People are using the policemen as scapegoats because there's nobody else.
They feel that we're in there like an occupation force.
We have to control the junkies, the prostitutes, the car breakers, the robbers, the assaulters, and yet at the same time we have to protect those people that also live in the same area. It can be hairy sometimes.
You hear so much about police brutality. I suppose it's a hard subject, again, for a top cop to talk about. How much of it is there? How much of the complaining about that is valid?
I think the frequency of the cry police brutality tends to obscure the real issues. And the real issues are professionalization of police, adequate pay for police. And as we do these things, then the use of excessive force and the attraction to the police department of people who are more likely than others to use excessive force will diminish. If a third of your police department didn't finish junior high school, yet they can arrest you or me or a PhD, then you have to wonder how much we really care about public safety and individual liberty.
A lot of times you go out here and you get a fight and you can't stand there and say, well, I can't use too much force on him because he'll charge brutality, and you have to use just as much force as he uses on you.
A young man coming out on the job today, he has a second thought, then he's liable to be dead.
All through my years, I have known men that have gone into police work, and unfortunately, I have known men who have left police work because they found, first, that they were unsupported within their departments frequently. They found that their families were suffering privations because of inadequate pay. They found that they had no respect in the communities that they worked.
All you need is some citizen to make a complaint against you. And maybe it's not a good complaint, but if he's got enough witnesses to say it's a good complaint, you can be out of a job.
We represent authority, and some people in the American society, I guess, is just opposed to authority.
How does the Negro community look upon a Negro policeman?
And a good illustration is a story that the police have told me on several occasions, where so many of their fine young officers recruited from Negro areas never want the people among whom they live, their neighbors, to know that they're in police work. They'll wear civilian regular clothes to the police station, and they'll change in a locker down there, and they'll try to stay out of the area they live in police work, not because they're in undercover police work at all. They're regular line duty men, but they're embarrassed about it. They're a little bit ashamed of it.
Being a black officer, you know more, you know the people better, and you know maybe how to get along with them in a better respect than you would if you were, I guess, if you were a white officer. But being in a uniform, the people automatically resent the uniform.
I think that the community, and I'm talking about the Negro community, and has just as much suspicion of the Negro officer as they do of the white officer. They sort of feel that he has sort of gotten out of the muck and has sort of gotten into the mainstream of society, and consequently he has joined the society that sort of controls their own destiny.
But suppose you were the kid in the ghetto, and suppose from the time you were first sensitive enough to recognize things, you could see the policeman on the beat when numbers tickets were being sold. And you could see him standing looking the other way when narcotics peddlers were selling dope, and he must have known about it. It's a little hard under those circumstances to have respect.
I seen a lot of cops do a lot of things that's dishonest, you know, like I seen them in after-hour joints, you know. I see them, bookies paying them off, you know. Certain joints that they are certain dudes that's out here, been out here all their life peddling drugs. But yet when a dude come on the street, maybe just start peddling drugs, you know. Now you wonder how the ones that been peddling drugs all their life stay out on the street and how the ones that just come out peddling drugs, how they get popped so fast, see?
Ever since I was 9 all the way up to now, they've been harassing me. You see what I mean? So I don't have no respect for no police. I don't dig it.
If the police would try to understand the people, the way the people feel, you know, and the people would, in turn, they already know what the police is for. See, but now it's up to the police to establish a relationship, not the people. See?
We associate the problem with the ghetto because it's most intense there. The daily contact between police and the ghetto dweller is so much more frequent and so much more frictive than in other parts of the city that we fail to remember that the total bundle of attitudes between the entire community and the police are troublesome elsewhere. And we saw very clearly in Chicago the antagonisms that exist and that come forth so readily between police and a wide spectrum of generally young people. They reflect the many divisions that we have in this country, divisions between the rich and the poor and the young and the old, and between the educated and the uneducated.
Well, I think the police are generally insecure about their own position in society, and they feel that the young, especially the educated young, are wise and smart Alex.
They should have broke their heads. What is this generation coming to? A bunch of madmen and commies and everything else?
One of the reasons the police are uptight is because youth, for a change, are beginning to challenge their authority. It used to be that whatever a policeman said was the law.
I remember when I was a boy, 14 years old, just watching a fire. I had my head split by not moving away as fast enough as a cop told me to. And I wind up with about 14 stitches in the head. These guys do waste and they get away with it. And I don't think that is right.
When I was young, I got a shot in the can at the police. I went home and my old man beat the hell out of me because I got hit by a cop.
The kids, these are white middle-class kids. They have everything that the cops probably want in life in terms of materialism. And they just don't, I don't think they comprehend what these people are fighting for. To me, the middle-class kids have reached a different plateau. They're going on to a better society, which is manifested in humanism. They've reached the point where materialism is no longer important to them. I don't think police realize this. They're on a different plateau in society, I think. These are the things they're striving for, a home in the suburbs, things which these kids have had already and passed on.
What is the cop on the beat's view of society?
It can tend to be pretty bleak. You know, a very large part of law enforcement work goes into family disputes. Murder, that's the most serious crime in most of our personal judgments. A third of them are within families. 75% are among people who know each other well. And the police are going into these situations all the time, and they see this. It can give you an awfully pessimistic estimate of mankind. If you're spending 50 hours a week out on the streets, having to make arrests of young toughs, bringing people into the station house who've just been cut up with a knife or shot with a pistol, if everything you see tends to be violent and tends to be aggressive and the people around you, you're always worried that something's going to hit you in the back or in the back of the head, then that wears you pretty thin in time. And you have to wonder what it is about our society that we care so little, and why it is that courts seem to turn some of these people loose that you just arrested and has been a risk to you personally.
You caught him, and you charged him, and then you feel like you've done it for nothing, that he's back out there in the street again.
There's never been a time in our history when the police are as important to the American people as they are today. These next several years will determine whether we have time to rebuild our cities and rebuild ourselves, to do the immense construction job that this country has to do. And the policeman is the chief key to the solution as to whether we will have this time. If he can maintain balance, if he can enforce the laws fairly without provocation, if he can effectively maintain social stability in the areas that he polices without excessiveness, without either overacting or underacting, then we will have this time. And if he fails, it is possible to see a division in this country caused by an escalation of riots and bloodshed that would create a division that would take generations to heal.
Because, Mark, you didn't have the privilege of seeing it before today, your knee-jerk reaction.
Was this done in 1968 or was it done yesterday?
Man, right?
The more things change, the more they stay the same. But you know what, I guess here's my thing. And I've thought about this before. Part of what I think was really described there is that law enforcement, police work, keeping people safe is probably, outside of medicine, one of the most sacred jobs somebody could have. It's really a life or death power. Okay. And so what really bothers me is how many lives depend on a baseball player? Okay. How many people does an actor or an actress protect? And yet they make millions of dollars. And one of the things that I was watching here that was sort of really consistent is that, these folks are not trained, they're not paid enough, they're not supported enough. And I think some of those things are still true. I don't by any means think that that's the crux of it. And, perhaps some people think, well, if you're going to ride around in a car and, beat up Black people for a living, you don't need to get paid all that much. But I honestly believe that, it's just, I wouldn't be surprised if in some cities, garbage people who pick up garbage got paid more than policemen did. And so I think part of the problem is that we assign $1 million job to somebody and then we pay them a penny. And that just doesn't work.
Wow, that's profound. We assign $1 million job to a person and then we pay them a penny.
Yeah, and it was interesting in the video. They had said, these are guys with grade school education coming out being police officers. I think it's important that police officers come out educated. Like I don't know, maybe they should attend 4-year college before they become police officers. And really learn the law or whatever courses they need to take to become, to get that degree so that they can become a police officer. Maybe the qualifications need to change, because I do sense that there is some prejudice judgment, not just race, but class. I think that still exists with police officers, some police officers today, not all. Because some police officers seem to be living pretty good. I mean, they got investment properties. I don't know, maybe they're just doing better with their money or they've been on the force longer. I don't know. But I sense that there is some prejudice, some envy, some jealousy that they take out on the educated.
Yeah. You know, Meleika, I would think that you're right to the point of some are doing well, but it goes back to Mark's point that they are asked to do $1 million job for a penny. Even if they are making $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year, is that enough to put their life at risk? And that's what they would always say, like teachers, we're not making enough. This is a mission that we want to embark on, that we want to live. This is the way of life that we want. You know, there's a lot that we can unpack about the 60 Minutes episode that was aired in 1968. But one of the things that I'm committed to is working together with law enforcement to get it right. In the disability community, they have cloned and they have a motto of nothing for us without us. You know, there's a lot that needs to be done to help heal the Chicago police, to help heal law enforcement in Illinois. But we will never get there if we're not at the table together. I mean, how are we going to put forth new policy for police when we're fighting the police to change policy that's going to impact their lives? They live it every day. They know what's best. And so any negotiations about police should be done with police. And police should be honest brokers, and leaders should be honest brokers so that we can heal law enforcement for a better society.
Why is that doctors get paid freaking tons of money after they complete their residency and they're dealing life death, like Mark was saying, and then you have police officers who are faced with it just as much as doctors are throughout the day dealing with emergencies, as well as paramedics. I don't even think paramedics get paid much. You know, like why is that?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Mark.
And does that old adage, I mean, does this apply here? And by the way, I also don't want people to roll their eyes and think, you know, these guys should be talking about, you know, prejudiced cops beating up black people. Instead, they're talking about, you know, cops not getting paid enough. And so I want to acknowledge that there is a balance here. And
there's layers to it.
There's layers to it, and it's complicated just like everything else. But, you know, to me, it all comes back to that same adage, and maybe it's too simplistic, but to me, it comes back to one adage, and that is you get what you pay for. Okay.
You know, yeah, that's true. But I think one of the things that we recognize is that if you're becoming a police officer, you don't expect to make a lot of money. And they know that they're not going to make a lot of money. And I think that they would like to make more. They would like to be protected and respected in the communities. And we can never, ever pay a person for putting their life on the line. There's not enough that we could pay them. I think that the number one thing that we could give law enforcement is the best training and a society that is fair so that we can have fewer interactions with law enforcement. You know, why are police people cleaning up the mess that government has created? For instance, less than a mile away where Mark lives in Oak Park, crime is lower and unemployment is lower than my community where I live in Austin. The school system, Mark, your school system in Evanston, Meleika, and in Oak Park is different than Chicago. So police are faced with those challenges that Springfield, the city of Chicago, Cook County government, all have dealt them a bad hand.
Something tells me we're not going to solve this problem today.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't think we're gonna solve. I mean, can they change the qualifications for police officers? Can they do that? Can
Yeah,
they
Sure,
do that at this
sure,
point?
yeah.
sure,
You
sure.
know,
And again, I just want to challenge something that Representative Ford said, which is, well, whoever goes into policing, they know they're not going to make a lot of money. So let's flip that on its head. Tell me, does it sound logical? Well, whoever's going to go into acting knows they're not going to get paid a lot of money. That they just do it for their passion, right? I mean, that's just, it makes sense, but should it? Is that, should
Yeah.
somebody go into policing? That's just because it's their passion and they want to help people. I don't know. I think it's a job just like any other job. And the fact is that if you're going to take a job and it's not going to pay you a lot of money, how does that define you? I mean, that is, how do you see yourself limited in a way that is, so is everybody who's going to take a job of being a cop doing it to help people? Why does somebody become a policeman? Do they become a policeman to make a living and support their family? Do they become a policeman because that's their passion and they want to help people and save lives? Or do they become a policeman because they're angry and they want to lash out, and this allows them to lash out with impunity?
yeah,
All
By
the
having a
above.
badge.
All the above.
yeah. I think that there's a small percentage of law enforcement that would like to lash out. I mean, 2% maybe.
They like
That
the power.
that like the power. I think all of the police love that power, but not all want to abuse it. And that's the thing. I think that I do firmly believe that society is so unfair to those that contribute so much. Teachers know that they're not going to make a lot of money, yet they go into it. And because of teachers, we have police, doctors, lawyers, and nurses and preachers and more teachers and Marks and Meleikas. And so they know, and even the police know that they're not going to make a lot of money. But that doesn't mean that society and government don't and shouldn't reward them for being good police people. And that's the difference. They know that they're not going in to make a lot of money. They know that they're going in to live the American dream, buy a house, take a vacation, send their kids to college, and have a decent living. So I firmly believe that if we could heal this relationship between the police and law enforcement, it'll make it easier for everyone. And I think that police will feel some relief. Now, here's a Black man talking about how I could and should be working with the police. Why? It's going to be in my best interest to make sure that this relationship between police and community is healed. This may be the #1 problem that's costing taxpayers so much. And I think that we seem to put it on the back burner and just continue to use this battle between police and community. And I think it has to be dealt with head on.
You know
What
what?
about, oh, go ahead, Mark.
I'm sorry, Meleika. I was just going to say, one of the things I was thinking about is, and you all in Springfield have done a lot of work over the last couple of years on policing and crime, and policing reform, et cetera, and criminal justice reform, et cetera, et cetera. And I was thinking, it just occurred to me that maybe next time there's a sort of a package of police-related reforms, one of the things that those packages should always include is pay raises for the police. You know, next time we take on and say what they're doing wrong, let's also say, well, here's what you get if you do it right.
There we go. That's incentive pay. That's what it's about. Incentive pay will always help, you know, motivate and dictate behavior, right? We need to incentivize through money, you know. So I like that. You know, I would say some of the things that I also heard was how the police are under a lot of pressure. Oh, they're seeing people shot. They're seeing people, people throwing bottles at them, people doing all sorts of things, and it's in their head. Oh, so we're dealing with a wounded person, whether we want to believe it or not, and then we don't provide the mental health support for them. We have to deal with this issue of law enforcement in our society, because we have men and women with guns. We have men and women in the children, you know, so.
Yeah, it's two things I wanted to say that at. One, yes, you have those that have the dream. I'm going to be a police officer. I know it's not a lot of money. I just want to protect and serve my community and help people. But sometimes they don't realize what they're really getting into until they get in there and they're like, oh, hell, this is not a lot of money. So then you get the police officers that go rogue and they become corrupt and start taking issues out on innocent people. And then you have the other element that we know exists, which I've been screaming for years, many have been screaming for years, is that the police departments need to be cleaned out, because you have a lot of white supremacists who have gone into law enforcement specifically to hurt Black and brown people. Well, mainly Black people, because you got brown getting into the police department as well to hurt Black people, but mainly Black people. Let's just put it out there. So you have that element too. And along with changing the qualifications to become a police officer, you have to get a 4-year degree. They need to do some serious psychological testing. I know they probably do to become, but they need to take it even deeper and do serious social media background checks, all sorts of checks to see who these people are affiliated with, who they've been affiliated with. Have you ever said the N-word back when you were 15 years old? Like, what's going on here? I mean, so much more needs to be done in terms of before a police officer is hired.
I mean, it's funny, we have a gang affiliation database, or at least we did up until recently. And somehow we never can pick out the cops that had a gang affiliation.
Oh, right.
Until it's too late, right? So I just think, you know, yeah, there is, I wish it was easy and there was just one problem. There are so many that it's hard to pick the most important ones. And I guess to me, I just love to know, well, where do we start?
Well,
what do we do first?
I'm glad you asked that question. I believe we start with asking the question, do we have a problem? You know, because if the police say we don't have a problem, we're doing everything that we're supposed to do. If they believe that, then we have a problem and we can't even start negotiating. And so we need to have a serious discussion with law enforcement to say, do we have a problem? When they say yes, and we say yes, now we could come to the table together to solve and begin solving the problems. That's going to be the start. You know, here's another thing. Back in 1968, according to that 60 Minutes clip, they talked about police being upset because they arrest them and then they're let out. It sounds familiar. Who was the administration in 1968? Kim Foxx wasn't the state's attorney then. So
was she born yet?
She was not born. So what do we say about that? I mean, this seems to me to be something that nothing's changed. And now it seems like it's new.
No, it just got worse. It got deeper, more intense, more
it-
layers.
So you think that more people are being let out of police arrests and they get let out? I mean, I can't say that. I'd say that I hear in 1968, the problems was happening then where the police are upset because they arrest them and they let them out the same day. That's what they said in 68. That's what they're saying in 2022.
I was actually just going to say that I'm really struggling with this one. This is, I find myself at a sitting here frustrated because I'm honestly at a loss for words. And both of you know me, so you know that's not a usual situation for me. And, you know, I can only think of, to me, all of it is, at the end of the day, you know, most people you talk to, they're not going to remember what you tell them or what facts you say. They're going to remember how you made them feel. Okay. And so to me, it just sort of comes down to this. Does a guy like me, when he sees the blue lights in his back mirror, rear view mirror, react differently than a guy with darker pigmentation? Okay.
Yeah,
And I think that's part of it also, is just at its most guttural, basic instinct. I don't think, let's say, a person in Highland Park is going to have the same response to a policeman as a person in Austin. Is that right? Is that true? Is that scientifically based? I don't know. But I suspect to some extent it is. And so just the whole issue is so fraught because it's so there's the facts piece of this, but then there's the feelings piece of this. And they're just so hard to separate. And how do you address both? You know, there's a reason why these are profound issues, but I guess I'll go back to what I was saying before. And look, let me make 2 points. One is, I do believe that cops, teachers, paramedics, they need to be paid more. We need to value those people more. We need to value our frontline heroes, even when we don't have COVID. Okay? The people who have to get out of bed and go do really tough, emotionally tough, physically tough things day in and day out. We need to understand that that's a different job than working in an office. If you are a teacher or a cop, I think you ought to be paid as much as the lowest paid football player in the NFL. Okay, I think there ought to be a law, hint, hint, Representative.
I hear you. I hear you.
That maybe what we ought to do is apply the scrub football player standard. And if you are a bench warmer in the NFL that gets picked up for a one-game contract and you make a year's salary for that game as minimum wage to be on that team that day, I think that says something about the fact that we don't have necessarily the right incentives and the right rewards.
Did you say the white?
Well, you know what? And maybe that's closer to the truth than we want to think about it too, maybe it is the white incentives and the white rewards, what white people are used to, what white people think of as real money, what white people think of as upper class, right? Here's one thing. And the other thing that I just got to say, and I feel this sort of deep in my bones, there is no scientific basis to it, but I really feel like I don't want to put them on the spot, but some of them, you know, to go back to the 60 Minutes episode clip that we watched just before, one of the sort of the most interesting kinds of perspectives that I find on this issue then and now is the black cops. Okay. And I really feel like there's something there that's more profound that we need to understand better. And I really think that people who have a foot in each of these worlds, and these are very different worlds still to some extent, I really feel like there's some insight and there's some help that they could give us. And I'll just say this, I would love to talk to some black cops about, you know, I wonder if you are the black son of a black cop. Do you feel any different when you get pulled over and you see those blue lights than if your father was a, I don't know, a scientist?
Yeah, you know, there's no doubt that the white privilege, it gives you the ability to feel different when the police is behind you. And it's the privilege that we see. We see it play out. You know, there's this level of respect for Mark versus the level of respect for LaShawn. It's true, you know, and we have to deal with the realities and we have to heal it. We have to make sure that we have in place rules, consequences, expectations, because when we have rules, consequences, and expectations, that dictates behavior. I don't care who you are, what you do. If you know that there are rules, consequences, and expectations, it will dictate your behavior. Even the most dangerous criminal stops at a stop sign because they know that they will get a ticket. Even the most dangerous criminal doesn't just go into Walgreens and take what they want because they know that they will go to jail. So rules, consequences matter. And I think that in order to heal society, we have to make sure that we work with law enforcement. And I think the top cop back in 1968 says, we are at a point where we are going to either build our communities up or we're going to be in riots. And he said that the police play a major role in this. I'm a believer in that. And, you know, there has to be this coming together, like the Beatles said.
You know, and I want to commend the two of you, Miss Gardner and Mr. Ford, because for all the hand-wringing about this, I don't think we talk about this enough.
We don't.
I don't think there's enough honest dialogue. I don't think we include cops in that dialogue enough. I think a lot of cops are very frustrated and fed up, and they have things that they want to say, whether we want to hear them or not. And, you know, how much anger and frustration, if you are the most beautiful human being in the world, how much anger and frustration and unfairness and injustice and insult and PTSD and injury does it take to turn you to turn you. You could be the most beautiful person in the world when you go into this. And after years and years of such horror, anybody, I think, can be turned into a different human being than they started off with. There's just so much here. And you know what? Again, I think it's all to the point of resources. We make this really simple: good cop, bad cop, you know, and good person, bad person, cop is right, cop is wrong. You know, if we would only pay as much attention to police interactions with, you know, people they stop on the street as we do to somebody getting slapped in the Grammys or the whatever, then maybe it would be a different world. But I would really love to get some cops on here with us.
Yeah.
For some dialogue and encourage folks to speak their mind. I guess to me, one thing that's really stark is there still time? Is this sort of like, is this problem like global warming, right? Like beyond a point of no return? Because Ramsey Clark was saying in 1968, which is what, like 2 years before you and I were born, Representative Ford, that was a pivotal moment, okay? Where in the next few years, I think he said, the next few years will show us or will decide or will be pivotal. And so here we are in the same situation 50 years later, 50 plus years later. And what are we doing? Nothing's changed. Can that really be right?
Well,
what can we do?
Well, let's go to a clip right here from a Chicago top cop. And then we'll come back.
Where do you think your department could afford to improve?
There's really some significant areas. Number one, building trust, engaging the community. And I mean, we are starting from a very, very low level of trust in the community. It's the reason why we're in a consent decree. So that's a fair assessment that, you know, we do a lot more. Of course, the consent decree, if we needed to be in one, it wouldn't be something that we could undo overnight. In other words, building trust is going to take a journey, and we're just beginning that journey. And we have set goals. Police officers are goal oriented. If you don't give officers a goal, they seem to flail away at trying to hit whatever task that we're trying to achieve. So fair assessment, but we will never stop engaging the community to build trust. We can never stop, and we cannot afford to wait for the perfect in place of the good. So we have a good start getting our officers out of their squad cars, out from behind their desk, into the community, and requiring them to create a positive interaction with the public.
So, I mean, here you have right here, the top cop saying we must improve relationships with the community. That's huge. I mean, that is what we talked about earlier. We said, how do we start? We start by having someone that's running a Chicago Police Department say that.
When we had Eddie Winters on, who was a former lieutenant, and we had raised the question about police officers getting out of their cars and doing more foot patrol, really engaging the community makes a difference. But that doesn't happen in every community. I mean, here in Evanston, we pushed for it. We wanted more foot patrol. We wanted to go back to when Officer Friendly knew all the business owners, knew all the families in the community, and it makes such a difference.
I would tell you that one thing's for sure, there's always a lot of finger pointing and everyone's damning one another. You know, you either have it or you don't. And you really, really have to be respectful. So I would say that the top cop of Chicago, you know, he's got value. You know, but the question is, are we going to work with him, or are we just going to throw down the gauntlet and say, you're bad, you're out? When we do that type of stuff, we gain nothing, we lose. And so I'm willing to continue to work with the top cop right now. He's he knows stuff, but the question is he the best? He may and he may not be, but he still hit the right note that he wants his police to be respected, to have a relationship with individuals, to have compliance, and to be able to make our community safer. So I'm for that. Those are the conversations that we have to have.
I like when he said more community engagement. I think that that is really key, getting to know the community that they are policing, getting to know the people in that community makes a difference, because you might not have as many arrests. You might just be able to talk to them and send them home, or call their parents, come pick them up. It makes a difference. There's an issue here in Evanston. We have an interim chief of police that they brought back, who a lot of people were not happy with, because young Black boys will get arrested hanging out with young white boys, and they're all engaged in the same activity, and they would just call the parent, hey, come get the white sons, the white boys, but the Black boys would get arrested, because the first Black woman chief of police interim that we had, she left within months. Within months, everybody was like, we were celebrating and hopeful she would actually get the position permanently. And then I don't know what happened. I would love to know what happened, but then they brought back him for the interim. Wow. And there was a lot of issues with that. So I love that he said, community engagement is key. It really is.
And listening to police is important, Mark. What do you say? What are you saying?
I guess I'll just, maybe the white guy has more luxury to parse these things and to push back on them. But, I like what he's saying. I appreciate that the police is, some percentage better at compliance than they were before. At the same time, the context for this is not voluntary, let's make it better, okay? Let's make sure we remember the context for this. The context for this is that an independent, impartial court, a judge, said, you all are so bad that we are putting in a court order called a consent decree that you will agree to, because if you don't, we'll make it even worse, that you have to get better. And so part of that is, how much can you expect things to improve if a judge is telling you to, okay? And maybe we ought to look at that on the criminal side as well as the police side, right? Maybe neither side can get rehabilitated if the only thing that is moving them towards that is the threat of punishment. But I just want to say that, yes, this guy did acknowledge we have problems, we're getting better. But even so, that was not done out of the goodness of his heart. And I can guarantee you that this conversation would have never happened if it wasn't for a court order.
President Obama's court.
I don't see a lot of cops showing up on TV talking about what a bad job they're doing unless it's within the context of responding to a greater threat. Okay.
Well, I know this has been another episode of Chicago Hill, and I would say if I had to advise the mayor, I would tell the mayor of the city of Chicago and all over, one, you have to go all in. And you have to make sure that you are listening and doing everything that you can to improve on law enforcement. It's a matter of life and death. And you can't fight with the police because they're not going anywhere. They're ingrained in our society. What are we going to do? So I'm all in with helping heal the Chicago police and law enforcement, and I hope they are too.
I'm wondering, how do you clean out those road cops though? It's the
Rules,
bad ones that are.
rules, consequences, and expectations.
Well, those are in place.
Not
But
really.
They don't care about them.
They're not. That's why there's the consent decree. And just recently have we started seeing cops being fired and jailed for killing Black people.
I hope so.
You know what?
hope so.
I think that's just as much of a positive as we can end this show on. This one really leaves me unsettled, and I think that is because the problem is so profound. I hope we get to talk about it some more.
All right. It's coming straight from the west side of Chicago. I'm LaShawn Ford.
Coming from the North Shore, Meleika Gardner.
And a little bit more west than the west side of Chicago, Mark Peysakhovich.
This has been Chicago Hills. See you guys next time.